Michael Saylor said that if Bitcoin wants to reach 10 million, it needs one final step. And that's exactly what just got approved just a few minutes ago in the USA. We're going to look at what was approved here and why this is a game changer. Also, there are major developments in the trade conflict between China and the USA. There's now a massive renewal happening here. There are indications that Abu Dhabi can make a mega Bitcoin move today. They're going to invest 100 billion in Bitcoin. There are also announcements about an emergency interest rate cut. But let me tell you one thing in advance. Spoiler alert. These two announcements could be pure fakes. Right now, we're also seeing a lot of fake news coverage, and there are exciting analyst assessments about where the Bitcoin price is headed next. Everyone's on edge waiting for the next Fed meeting. It's happening in just one day. Then we'll see how things move forward here with the Bitcoin price and much more before we really dive in. Take a quick second, smash that like button below for Bitcoin, freedom, decentralization, and as a thank you, I'll show you the bullish sunset again. Today, the beach is completely empty, but of course, people are always out and about here. You don't really feel the sun here, and we really need to be careful. Yes, we're moving in a bullish direction, and yes, rate cuts are right around the corner. But now news like this is coming out too. 11 out of the 12 FOMC members expect a 50 basis point rate cut in one day. And that's obviously very clear here. Fake news. You really have to be careful here. You can see this has 250,000 views. People are hyping the whole thing up. But no, there won't be a 50 basis point rate cut here. That's completely made up. I don't know why people just pick this up, copy it, and don't even question it. That's why we're going through all these stories here. The next one is this story here. 108. Oh, sorry, I said it wrong before. Not millions, but 100 trillion. Well, in Germany, that's billions. So 100 billion are supposed to be invested in Bitcoin from Abu Dhabi tomorrow, she writes. Eric, yikes. I don't know if this is meant seriously. If it's just meant as a joke, then cool. But if it really is meant seriously, then it's probably also bullshit. Also bullshit. Just take a photo here with some random sheikhs and say, hey, a mega investment is coming. No idea whether that was meant seriously or not. In any case, I'm still not quite sure if that's actually going to happen tomorrow. Let's just wait and see. What's much more interesting is what's happening here now. Let's take a look at what's actually happening here, shall we? The floodgates are open, Em. The US CFTC just announced it will test Bitcoin as collateral for derivatives. So now, Bitcoin is being tested as collateral for derivatives here. And we all know the collateral market is much bigger than the credit market and many others combined. The derivatives market is probably the largest financial market in the entire world. It's basically massive. It's a market made of air and paper. And now, Bitcoin is being included in this air and paper market. Michael Saylor said it very early on. If Bitcoin wants to rise to 10 million or more, then banks have to be included here. And Bitcoin as a collateral layer has to work better and better. We need Bitcoin as loan collateral. And that's exactly what's happening here now. Not only can we buy houses on credit, backed by Bitcoin, or take out various loans, so to speak, backed by Bitcoin, but we can also build derivatives backed by Bitcoin. I mean, some people might say Michael Saylor is already doing something like that. But technically speaking, Michael Saylor is actually building, not derivatives, but he names them digital credit. These are preferred shares. That's something completely different from derivatives. But the derivatives market is now also being linked to Bitcoin. And that is, on the one hand, a huge opportunity. Michael Saylor says, yes, that's the condition for Bitcoin to rise to 10 million. On the other hand, there is a major risk. That will have even more paper Bitcoin. We often see this kind of manipulation where we can't explain where these price movements are coming from. That's often due to the paper Bitcoin market, of course. Until 2017, there was no paper Bitcoin market. Then the first futures ETFs were launched. Later, the spot ETFs, and of course, a whole lot of Bitcoin exchanges that at times issued paper, like FTX, for example. And now the derivatives markets are coming in. So I'm a bit critical of the whole thing as well, because it means that Bitcoin is losing more and more of its purity. Samson Mao says there's really no choice here in the USA. The USA has to adopt Bitcoin if they don't want to go completely bankrupt here. That means Bitcoin isn't optional here, but rather the last resort solution. And yes, there are all these speculations about whether the USA is buying Bitcoin, whether they're already secretly doing it in the background, but we still don't have any official announcements. Weird. There are more and more regulatory steps being taken that make a lot of sense, like with the CFTC, the Bitcoin ETFs, and many others. But there are no Bitcoin purchases happening. And there are still these strange actions being taken against Bitcoin developers who write open source code, like those from Samurai Wallet and so on, where it's also not really clear how to assess the whole situation. So I still really don't get it. I can't make sense of the US's Bitcoin strategy. But someone who has a really interesting take on this is Horst Linning.
With Bitcoin, in hindsight, we're all smarter. Now would have been the time to rebalance, or maybe take some profits. That would have been good. That surprised you. Honestly, I have to say, I would have expected Bitcoin to have more room to run for a while longer. All in all, it's actually been a disappointing year, hasn't it? Started off really well, didn't it? Did it surprise you that Bitcoin ran out of steam so early?
Well, if you look at Bitcoin over the long term, it shows extreme volatility, up to 70%. So if someone says, I'm all in on Bitcoin, putting 100% in, you really have to be able to handle that. I mean, this kind of volatility, I don't like it. That's why, from my point of view, Bitcoin isn't a 100% thing, but it's not a zero thing either. It's a diversification. And as you can see, Bitcoin has gone down and gold and silver have gone up. So diversification worked out. It's a good thing. That's how it should be. Yeah.
Of course, when it goes down, you're glad you don't have too much Bitcoin. That's just the volatility. Not everyone can handle it. We Bitcoiners always say volatility is vitality. In other words, volatility means liveliness. Everything that's alive is volatile. Little kids are volatile. Old people aren't volatile anymore. We're very, very predictable. In the financial markets, we artificially remove volatility. We use bailout packages and all sorts of other things to build it out. We create market breakers, and who knows what else gets thrown in. And yes, you need to have strong nerves, but you also need a really, really long time horizon. But one thing is always clear. One Bitcoin is one Bitcoin. Volatility only comes into play when we look at all this in fiat terms. But now we have some exciting news about the trade conflicts. I already mentioned this earlier. There's a major twist happening now. President Trump announced that he had a phone call with Chinese President Xi, and that the sale of NVIDIA's H200 chip to China will continue, and that the whole thing has been approved. Trump says that 25% of the revenue would go to the USA, and the same approach applies to AMD, Intel, and others. So I think this is a really, really important story. We know that a huge part of the global economy now depends on these AI companies. That means if these AI companies weaken, there will also be problems in the world economy. NVIDIA has now become such a major player, even in the entire S&P 500. And of course, they all depend on chips. All of them, every single one. Pretty much all the big companies these days, including the ones you just mentioned here, AMD, Intel, and so on. So much depends on these chips. It's just a fact. And because of that, it's obviously a good thing, which will also have a very positive indirect effect on Bitcoin. But now here's another really, really interesting point. Now we're coming back to Samson Mow, because we just talked about the story that the US has to buy Bitcoin. And a lot of people now think, for example, that it's a risk to add Bitcoin to your portfolio, just like Horst Lubing said here. Not exactly a risk, but you just have to be able to handle the volatility. But actually, that's the wrong perspective. It's not that Bitcoin is dangerous. Bitcoin is the threat to the traditional financial system. It's actually the other way around.
There's always concern about Bitcoin, like you mentioned, the quantum concern. Like, what if quantum computing kills Bitcoin? But I posted something on X a few days ago that Bitcoin is not in danger. Bitcoin is the danger, because you shouldn't be worrying about Bitcoin and quantum computing when there are so many other problems that will be caused when quantum computing actually works. But first of all, quantum computing is not a threat so far, and probably won't be for another 5-10 years. Quantum computers can't even factor 21 right now without some heavy customization of the algorithm. But if we did have quantum computers, let's say tomorrow, that would destroy the traditional financial system. All the banking sector would be wiped out. Stocks, trading, everything would be broken. All the encryption used in those systems would be broken first. And it's difficult because they don't have such a straight upgrade path like with Bitcoin. So for Bitcoin, because it is decentralized and it's software, we know what paths we have to fix the quantum threat, to mitigate the quantum threat. We just have to write the code, and then every node on the network, individuals like myself and others, update our software, and Bitcoin is now quantum resistant.